Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for the Voters of Tomorrow Vice Presidential Debate pre-show. My name is Ryan Buck, and I'm here with the Executive Director of Voters of Tomorrow,
Hi,
Santiago
everyone.
Mayer, along with Sophia Shapiro, Jerome Foster II, Virginia
Hey,
Gaffney, and Justin Filbert. We'll be going over some of the topics that our candidates will be speaking about in the debate. Before we get started, if you want to learn more about Voters of Tomorrow, you can find us at votersoftomorrow.org, as well as follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Voters of Tomorrow or at Voters Tomorrow. Additionally, if you'd like to follow any of our panel members, you can find their social media handle in the top left of their screen. Lastly, we want to remind you that the views expressed by our hosts and guests are theirs of their own and not those of voters to it. Are you guys ready?
yeah,
I'm excited to watch the debate tonight. Okay,
me too.
so first question, I'm just going to open up to everybody, so it's on the table. Pence was the head of the COVID task force. We've seen almost 8 million people infected. I think it's 7.6 million right now, and 211,000 people die. How has Pence handled this situation in your personal opinion?
Well, so I think what we can obviously all agree on is the fact that it has been a complete mess. We had no testing for the beginning months of the pandemic. After we had testing, it was really limited and it was really hard to get a test. And I mean, just looking at the numbers, that's everything. We're at over 4 million people who've been infected. We are at over 210,000 deaths. And the president of the United States is quarantining he should be quarantining because he got infected. So I think it's just been complete incompetence by everyone involved with it. And I really expect Mike Pence to get questioned over it by Kamala Harris tonight.
I completely agree with you. And I think it has been, in my eyes, a colossal failure. We shut down for months. I think in Pennsylvania, at least, we were completely shut down for so long. And there was no ramp up of national testing. There was no ramp up of PPE during that time when we were completely shut down. And then we started to reopen, and we had made no progress in that time. We didn't capitalize on the fact that we had everyone in the country sheltered in place in their own homes, staying safe. And then we reopened and expected it to just disappear. As the president actually said, it would just disappear. And in my eyes, it was just a complete failure of the national government.
Okay, so Sophia and Santiago,
Yeah.
if Kamala was based on her current policies, past policies, and plans, how do you think she would have done in his shoes?
Well, first of all, full disclosure, I supported Kamala during the primaries, and I've been an avid supporter of hers ever since she got named as VP. So I think she and the Biden campaign have a really comprehensive plan to address COVID-19 and the economic issues that come with it. They've gone over how they will implement science-based measures, which is exactly what we need right now because the current administration is not listening to science. And that's what I expect we will hear tonight. Kamala will go over what she would have done as vice president or as leader of the coronavirus response team. And meanwhile, Mike Pence, I expect, will just try to keep defending Trump because that's what he does. That's his job right now.
And also, yeah, like when we talk about Kamala Harris's shoes, which she would have done, like she most definitely would have passed the House Democrats' bill for the HEROES Act, which would have allowed $3.4 trillion of funding for COVID-19 relief. And that would have transformatively changed America's response in COVID-19 and protected millions of Americans from being infected and thousands from dying. And she would have really put the pedal to the metal and made sure that people have access to unemployment benefits that aren't being delivered at this point.
Absolutely.
And Sophia?
I think bottom line, Kamala Harris believes in science. Kamala Harris believes the experts around her, and she would have taken all the information given to her and actually ran with it and listened to the experts. And I think that is something that this administration has just completely failed to do.
So, what do you all think? So, how do I put this? If you were in Pence's shoes and you were dealing with this entire kind of super spreader event that we know that happened, do you think that Pence is okay with exposing his own staff to COVID because of Trump? Because he does have his own his own staff, as well as everybody else in the White House, and objecting to this, except for more liberal media sources. So what do you guys think about that? Should he be exposing his staff?
He's shown they asked both Kamala and Pence, are you going to, how would you feel about having plexiglass shields on the stage? Kamala was obviously, sounds like a great idea. I'm totally in favor. And the Pence group said, absolutely not. He has made the choice over and over again to continue spreading this disease to not only himself, but his staff, and everyone who will be subjected to the cross-contamination of the meeting of the minds tonight.
And so I also kind of wanted to talk about so Biden has obviously voiced that in the previous debate, he had voiced that Trump not wearing a mask was kind of the reason that he got COVID in the first place. So would you guys see Kamala really being a role model wearing masks? Because in her previous past has shown that she seems to kind of contradict herself sometimes. So do you think that in this present moment, if
Well,
just wearing a mask. Trump has repeatedly refused, and Pence has done the same, repeatedly refused to wear a mask, and they hold events with no social distancing and no mask requirements. So I think just starting out with that very basic step and encouraging the American people to say, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I think that's kind of what Biden and Harris would lean towards, is just setting that example around it that the president has created over the last couple of months.
Absolutely. And I think on the campaign trail, it is completely clear. The Biden-Harris campaign is taking every precaution necessary to ensure the safety of their voters and the people that attend their events. Every campaign event has been socially distanced. You're required to wear a mask, and there are strict rules and regulations that are implemented. And I think just campaigning in a way that is safe shows that as an administration, they would do the same.
Furthermore, I just think that the fact that they will put science over politics is something that cannot be overstated. We know that the reason that many of the decisions made by the current administration were made was because Donald Trump was prioritizing his re-election opportunities over public health. And that's just something, I don't think, and the way they behave in the campaign trail doesn't show that Biden or Harris would do this. So again, that's something that I fully expect Kamala Harris will call Mike Pence out for. Why did you go against science when the indications were pretty clear that if you did what you did, hundreds of thousands of people will die? They played with the lives of 320 million people just because they wanted to win an election. And if they're willing to do that, they do not deserve to win that election.
So going back to the previous presidential debate, do y'all think that they're gonna, or maybe I guess Kamala, do you think Kamala will bring up Trump's taxes?
Absolutely. I think that it's needed to, because it shows how drastically different Americans are living, and the fact that average American pays $750 a month, while he only paid $750 in his entire year. And that's insane when you think about that. And I think that we have to talk about the economic reality of Americans right now, because so many people are out of work and are unable to sustain themselves and their families. And I think that Kamala is going to speak directly to the American people, and she's going to speak to working families that right now are going through a lot. And when they see the president, they don't see someone that reflects everyday Americans, but reflects the top 1% who are in a drastically different situation than the people that are struggling due to COVID-19.
she might bring it up in the economic sense of talking about income disparity and social classes in the States, but I don't think she'd bring it up in a combative, haha, look at your campaign kind of way. I have a feeling she's going to try to keep it as classy as possible, and that's probably largely due to the fact that she knows her opponent well. We all know Pence really well. He's a very good speaker. Before this, he was a radio host. He has a lot of experience in spinning things the way they need to be spun for people to agree with him. And if she gets visibly frustrated or annoyed or short with him, it will come back to bite her in the eyes of the voters. She has to be the epitome of decorum this evening to be respected. And that's tragic.
To be fair, Mike Pence does have the personality of a human deodorant stick. So just making sure that we see that contrast where while Mike Pence is speaking like a cyborg, she will actually go ahead and bring personality and a engaging tone to the conversation. The last debate, I mean, I fully support Joe Biden, and I think we saw what people expected to see most people expected to see two old white guys gelling at each other. Instead, we ended up with one old white guy and one toddler and one orange toddler. So I just think that having that contrast will be really important, especially given the age of the two presidential candidates. We might very well see, this debate might very well show who will be the next president if a tragedy were to happen. And that is something that it requires both Kamala and Mike Pence to show who they really are. So I agree that Kamala should be the epitome of decorum, but at the same time, she really should show herself to be her. She can't mask herself because she might very well be whether it's because something happens or because Joe Biden decides not to run for a second term or because she runs in 8 years. She might very well be who will be listening to in press briefings for the next 8, 12, 16 years maybe. And we need to know that person.
I think that's something she does really well too. I mean, right after Biden announced her as his VP pick, we saw a kind of excitement come back to the campaign that we weren't really seeing there before. So I think she'll be able to bring that personality and bring who she really is to the stage, while also, like we've talked about, it's sad, but maintaining that decorum that people are going to expect her to have.
Also, I think that when we talk about Kamala, she does have some questions to answer. Is that when she talks to the Black community, she went on like Breakfast Club and talked about how she now is embracive of marijuana, but she's locked up a lot of Black and brown people in California for the same crime. And I think that's something she actually has to answer for. And similarly for Mike Pence, he is consistently against LGBTQIA rights and is continuing to advance that stigma and that discrimination. I think that for both of them, they have some questions to answer about where they stand with those communities and how they're going to change their policy to be more accepting and justified in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you all. So as we know, we're going to kind of get into healthcare here. As we know, Harris is actually, you know what? Before we get into this, let's do some comparing and contrasting. So Santiago, can you give me a rundown on Kamala's policies?
So for those who don't know, Kamala Harris is the junior senator for California. She used to be the attorney general of the state. Beforehand, she also used to be district attorney for San Francisco. She is, even though she's perceived to be in the moderate side of in the moderate wing of the party, she's actually really to the center of the Democratic Party. She's been between more leftist policies and more moderate establishment politicians. So some of the policies that she supported during her campaign, for example, I really like her healthcare proposal. It did not go as far to the left as Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren's, but it also was way more inclusive than what Amy Klobuchar was supporting, for example. And the Joe Biden campaign, when they brought her on, they did a really smart thing and adopted a lot of elements from her campaign policy, which I still love because, like I said, I supported Kamala during the primaries. And yeah, I mean, her policy is generally, it's not drastically different from Joe Biden's. It's more age. It's just it hasn't aged as much because it's relatively new and it's made with the current times in mind. And it's considerably acceptable to all sides of the Democratic Party, especially.
Differ.
So Mike Pence.
Like, where's the biggest contrast?
So Mike Pence does not have a strong policy record himself. He was in the House for a while, but he wasn't really a leading figure in the House. He was also the governor for Indiana, but as a governor, he did not necessarily push a lot of policy. He mostly just supported what the Indiana legislature was working on. And as vice president, he's mostly been working to support whatever policy Trump has pushed. So his biggest accomplishment in the past 4 years has been the passage of the Tax Reform Act that Republicans pushed in 2017, I believe. And I mean, that's aside from that and the trade agreement with Mexico and Canada, those have been their two main legislative accomplishments. So there's not necessarily a lot of policy to contrast. Just you can compare her policy to Trump's directly because it's essentially the same as Pence's.
Has anything come directly into fruition because of Pence in the past 4 years almost?
Well, he was the main thing that he was assigned to, mostly because he hadn't done anything for 3 years, was he was assigned to lead the government's coronavirus response.
Right.
And he arguably butchered that, and it did not go well. So, not really, no.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get into healthcare now. So, as we know, Harris is a pro-choice candidate. How is that affecting her run? And would Biden see the same response if he had ran with another pro-choice candidate? This is open to everyone.
Yeah, I think that for Harris, she has a really unique stance on this, in the fact that she is also calling for investments in maternal health crises because Black women are 3 times more likely to have maternal issues throughout childbirth than white women. And that's a really different stance than other people because of the fact that she had that direct connection with that community. And also, it's kind of different because her stance on healthcare has been pretty wish-washy throughout the entire campaign trail. At first, she signed on to Bernie Sanders' plan for a single-payer system. And then she came out with her own solution of having like a strictly regulated private sector, but then also having a public option. So I think she also has to talk about like what is her solution once she gets into office and how they're going to mesh with Biden's ultimate vision of what healthcare should look like in America.
And I think it's important to point out the fact that she is a woman saying that women should have the right to choose. And I think that's something that we cannot ignore. Personally, it really makes me excited to see a woman on the debate stage standing up for women's rights rather than having old men making the decisions for women's bodies. I think that is something so crucial and something that when it was announced that she would be vice president made me feel really excited and really hopeful about the future. I know we've had some really dark times over the last 4 years, repealing women's rights and trying to roll back just everything that a woman can do with her own body. And I think that that's something really important and something that makes me feel really excited about her as a candidate.
So we haven't really talked about the big elephant in the room here. She's going to be our first Black female vice president.
Asian Black female vice president.
Asian Black female vice president. You know, our last president was a Black male, President Barack Obama. So how do you think that this is going to affect the next generation? So Generation Alpha is the next generation. Them growing up, as well as the lower end of Gen Z, how do you think this is going to affect them? How do you think they might look at the world different? Because I see it as a really beautiful thing. I think it's really, really awesome. And I really hope it has a great effect on, future children. So, but what do y'all think about that?
Representation is everything. Representation is everything, not just in media, not just in our stories, but in our houses of government, in every room where it happens. There should be someone who is affected by that decision. And Kamala is affected by that decision. I'm affected by that decision. Sophia is affected by that decision. Probably about half of our viewers are affected by that decision. So having her voice, her legitimately unique perspective, and gosh, I wish it wasn't unique in government, is going to be a game changer. And now for children in school to be able to respond not just with fictional characters, but with a real life superhero as their role model. You know, when their teacher says, what do you want to be when you grow up, and who do you see yourself as, and who's your hero? They can say, obviously, it's Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Something special kind of about that. I'm in a leadership academy at Pitt, and yesterday we were having a discussion about what it means to be able to connect to your leader and understand the people you are leading if you are a leader. And I think being able to have that connection, like for me, to be able to look up to a vice president and see that it's a powerful woman that has worked hard her whole life and really like earned what she's accomplished is just so special and enables other young women who might not think that they could grow up to be the vice president and in the future possibly even the president. And it really shows them that they can do whatever they set their mind to, and they can accomplish whatever they want to, and being a woman is not going to stop them.
Yeah.
Based off that, Sophia, the spirit and principles also teach us that we should be walking with those at the margins and forming those authentic relationships. And I think that's something that Harris is going to be much more suited to do than any past politician that we've seen, because everybody across America will be able to look at her and look at the future generation of politicians and see themselves, and like Gaffney was saying, realize that they can do anything, and as long as they set their mind to it, they can get it done.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, I think the fact that it's a follow-up from 2016 where we were so close to shattering that glass ceiling and it unfortunately didn't happen. The fact that we're close to shattering another glass ceiling, even if it's not as high, it puts us in a really good position to try again in 4 or 8 years and actually get a woman president.
And also,
right,
for me, I had like a personal story from like my friend was able to vote. She had voted for President Obama. And like it's kind of like a full circle moment going back to how we're now having our first Asian American Black woman come out and really show like how diversity is like something that can bring community and unite Americans together. Because like I remember going and being 6 years old, passing out yard signs and just having a great time with my community. And like I know there's so many AAPI community members that are out there, like how Chloe Bennett launched the New a couple weeks ago. And now we're seeing that like we're going to see continual momentum from what is right now the lowest voting bloc, which are Asian Americans, to really mobilize and turn out because they see a reflection of themselves as not just the product, but as the people who are pacing the precedent in American politics to really represent themselves as well.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. We will be back in just a few minutes.
All right.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the VOT Vice Presidential Pre-Show Debate Pre-Show. So we're going to continue talking about healthcare here, and then we're going to get into some LGBTQIA plus rights, and then we're going to get into climate change for this little second half. Okay, so let's talk about reproductive rights. This question is going to be on the table for anybody to answer. So we know Harris is pro-choice, and we know all the stances. If Santiago could give us a quick reminder on where they stand with all that.
Yeah, so I mean, Joe Biden has been one of the biggest advocates for LGBT issues, probably in the last decade. In government, he was one of the main forces that pushed for the legalization of same-sex marriage, and they've been really dedicated to protecting the precedent of Roe v. Wade and everything regarding that. So, yeah.
Okay, so I just want to put another question on the table. Or Jerome, did you want to say something?
It's talking about LGBTQ rights and just talking about like the history of Kamala Harris, but that's
okay. So Pence, I want to read a quote from Pence. Quote, "I long for the day that Roe v. Wade is sent to the ash heap of history." He also introduced the very first piece of federal legislation to defund hood when he served as a representative for Indiana. So we may see this, day in the future, in the near future, unfortunately, with all the talks going on about it. And with the new Supreme Court justice being, nominated and sworn in, what effect will this have on the general population?
Pence doesn't seem to understand Roe v. Wade is protected by the 14th Amendment. And, conservatives, Republicans, they're really big on protecting their amendment rights. So if we're going to overturn 14, is there anything else we're going to put on the table for overturning?
I think there's an amendment. I believe it's like one of the first two, maybe the second, that would be on the chopping block.
Anybody else have an opinion on, Pence's situation with Planned Parenthood? I mean, he was literally trying to defund it, and he was the head for it. So, this was basically all him.
I think it's terrifying, and
Oh my God,
to
yeah.
young women around the country, it's horrible to think about the fact that be able to make decisions regarding your own body, and you won't be able to have control over your future. And the fact that an old white man is deciding, and a Supreme Court that was kind of made up by old white men is horrible. It should not be a decision that is made by old in government. It should be decisions made between women and their doctors, and that's that.
And we talked about that in our Planned Parenthood episode of the VOTcast, is that Planned Parenthood does so much more than just abortions, but Pence and conservatives alike want to use that as their talking point to defund it, when in all actuality, if their goal is to cut down on the number of abortions, then they should be funding the shit out of Planned Parenthood, and they should be pushing sex education, and they should be pushing contraceptives and all the other beneficial programs that Planned Parenthood does. But they would rather go back to that single talking point to push their personal agenda and accomplish whatever they want to get done.
And Gaffney, can you please give us just a quick rundown of all the things that Planned Parenthood actually does other than abortion?
Should I go alphabetically, or can I go by priority? We can start.
Thank you.
We can start with cancer screenings, and then we can get, how about dick medicine, and then we can go into preventative care. We can talk about postpartum, because it is for planning your parenthood. And if you have decided to become a parent, they'll still be there for you. They're still physicians. They still have your best interests at heart. And if they really, really, really want to prevent abortions, they should provide more birth control, which is way back up there at the beginning of the alphabet. When I was able to get a tubal ligation last December, that prevented who knows how many abortions I may have needed in my lifetime. I can no longer get pregnant. Now that's no unwanted children. That is no need for abortions. That's no additional burden on our foster care system. Imagine the lives that could be saved by just a little more access.
Yeah, I completely agree. It really feels like we're kind of regressing here. Like we're not going forward in time, and the thing that has always saved this country is being progressive and moving forward with things. And the fact that we're still even having this conversation in 2020, almost the end of 2020, is just ridiculous to me, and I don't understand it.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
mean,
think to that regard,
we're going through a period of progression, not progress. Time is moving forward, and we're going through every day, but we're not making any progress. We're rolling back all of the progress that we've made over the last X amount of years, and we're rolling back access, as Gaffney was saying, access to contraception, and we're rolling back access that can prevent unwanted pregnancies in the first place. And it's not an ideal situation to be in at all.
I think it's very easy to get bogged down in everything that's happened over the last 4 years, because the last 4 years have been terrible. But I also think it's important to look to the future, and we're already starting to see it. We're going back now, but if we are able to look to the future and the progressive future that most of Gen Z wants and most of Gen Z is going to advocate for, I think it's going to, we're going to see massive social change in the way we're talking about these issues. And hopefully by 2024, we're not having this discussion because, yeah, women have the right to get an abortion. What government, it's not the government's spot to be telling them one way or another. So I think if we just look forward to and keep fighting for progressive change, that we'll be able to actively change things.
All right, so let's get into our LGBTQIA plus topic for this. It's my favorite part. Okay, so let's just get right into it. Gaffney, Pence and Harris obviously have very different views about the LGBTQ community and LGBTQ rights. How do you think this will play out in the debate tonight? And do you think Kamala will bring it up? Do you think Pence will bring it up? Or the moderator will bring it up? What do you think is going to happen?
I think it'll end up being an inescapable topic no matter how it comes to light.
Agreed.
It was obviously a big part of this campaign season. When we started off, we had a gay candidate from Indiana. You know who I'm talking about. And Pence had made comments about Mayor Pete's opinions of him, saying that he should know better, and it brought Pence's faith into question. And for a conservative, your faith is the biggest thing you have with your voting base. So we're seeing the combination. This really is an intersectional issue. We're seeing the combination of a woman being on the debate stage, having defeated a gay candidate in the primaries, and then you have an openly critical man who does not like the queer community, has not interacted positively with the queer community, facing a pandemic that disproportionately affects people who were already in precarious social situations. No matter how it comes up, he's going to have to face the fact that if he wants to win this election for himself and for his candidates, I'm going to need to embrace more voters.
Needs to expand his pool and work on the LGBTQ community. It's a huge loss for them, and they really like to have certain token gay people, shall we say. I mean, we know that they promote and pay certain people to post about Donald Trump, within the LGBTQ community. So I just want to also open this to everybody. I think Kamala will bring it up. Do you think Pence will bring it up? And what do you think is going to be the conversation there?
So I think Mike Pence is he's a well-known homophobe. So I don't think there's any world in which it isn't brought up in a debate. It is well known that he supported conversion therapy, which is obviously not popular with most demographics today, aside from older white conservatives, except, just that, because they're the only ones that care at this point. And especially Generation C, everyone's really accepting of, especially of gender and sexuality. So I don't think there's a way in which you can appeal to any of the Democratic base without attacking that point and going after Mike Pence for that. He completely butchered the response to the AIDS epidemic in his state when he was governor. That ties perfectly in which with his record on COVID response, which he also butchered. So there's just so many reasons to go after it that I don't think there's any possibility where she doesn't. There would be Kamala Harris is an amazing debater, and as everyone knows, I'm really excited to see her demolish Mike Pence. So I don't think there's any world in which she doesn't bring it up. It's just such a good point to attack that she should go for it, and she probably will.
Yeah, and also I think that really when we talk about conversion therapy, a lot of people really don't know what the skill of that is and what that entails. It's actually like separating you from your community and your family. And for months, you're told that you, yourself, your sexuality, and what you believe in is not worth living. And you need to change fundamentally who you are. And that actually has risen a lot in suicide rates will become once you get out of conversion therapy or while you're in conversion therapy. And I think also it's also with when Kamala Harris has been training, she's definitely going to bring it up because of the fact that she has been practicing with Mayor Pete, who ran for president and talked about how he really just made sure that a lot of LGBT community members in his district felt the brunt of his suppression and his disdain for that community. And I think that what we're going to see is a complete disrespect and complete lack of understanding from people that are not in the LGBT community, and they're going to be educated tonight on what Pence actually stands for and what he actually has been doing to American people and what he supports. So it's gonna be a massive shift for people to be educated about what's been happening to LGBT community.
Yeah, I mean, conversion therapy, it's been proven not to work. It's brutal a lot of times. It's a really sad situation, and if you want to go look at that, there are stories, but it's just an awful thing. And the fact that he supports something so awful and he calls himself pro-life, oh goodness
Can we
gracious.
just for a second address the pro-life point? Because we all know, and as has been proven, they're not pro-life. They really don't care about children after they're born. They're pro-bird, and I wouldn't even go that far because there's a lot of people who they really just don't give a fuck if their children are like if children die while their mom is pregnant. They are anti-choice, and the fact that they've taken this pro-life stance is really just it's really just politics. They are not pro-life. They're anti-choice, and we should just refer to them like that.
So back to LGBTQA plus rights and everything having to do with that, I just wanted to read a little excerpt from the GOP platform, their published public platform. Quote, "Our laws and our government's regulations should recognize marriage as the union of one man and one woman. We do not accept the Supreme Court's redefinition of marriage, and we urge its reversal." So, Sophia, what do you think about that? Do you think that it's fair that they're using that as one of their points of their platform for the entire GOP? What do you think about that?
I'm appalled by it. I think that Gen Z especially, we're growing up surrounded by kind of a new way of education, like accept everyone for who they are. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to agree with it, but accept everyone. And when an entire party puts on their platform something like that, it's horrible because you can't. It then also alienates Republicans who want to support LGBTQAI plus rights, and it alienates people, and it also rolls back progress. Like we were saying before with women's issues, it's just very detrimental to the progress that we're trying to make, and it's really a shame.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think Gen Z is, the most tolerant, and I shouldn't even say tolerant. I should say supportive generation, the LGBTQI plus community. And it's a fact that we are more diverse and open sexually than previous generations. So I wanted to talk about Pence's statements about the LGBTQ community. They're from the early 2000s, and they're when he was a senator. Do you think his opinions from then have changed? And is he kind of, I mean, to me, he seems avoidant of the topics. So, Gaffney, what's your opinion on this?
His opinions have not changed. He would have spoken on it because he's a man and he loves to talk. And we've heard him talk on things that he does care about. When he has words, we hear them. And he's spoken on this subject, and that's all he has to say. And now when people ask, on one hand, he's like, man, I've already, but on the other hand, he knows that this is a base that he needs to win. And since he doesn't have anything nice to say, he can't say anything at all. So what's he going to do? Avoid the subject.
And what do you think of these people who are in the LGBTQIA plus community and are actively a part of Trump's kind of payroll? What do you think about that?
Self-hate, internalizing the words that people have spoken about you. When you grow up in a household that expresses these ideals, and you're looking into yourself and you're like, wait, are they talking about me? Well, now I can't tell them. I can't come out, because if they have these opinions, that means they're going to feel that way about me, and I don't want them to feel that way about me. And you grow up with this feeling in your heart that this is something that's wrong because this is what you've always been around. And now you've got the sick feeling in your chest. And this isn't only prevalent in the LGBT community. You see this in Latinos for Trump and Black Americans who are carrying around notions that are detrimental to themselves. And even if they don't realize they're detrimental to themselves, they're voting for their own demise by supporting this man.
They might also just be acting out of selfishness. They're getting paid, so they don't care if their rights are diminished as long as they still get that paycheck, and they don't care about the other people like them who aren't getting a paycheck and are also getting their rights diminished. So that might also be an angle to look from.
When you look at income disparity, sometimes you can't look with too much scrutiny at where your pay is coming from. When it's a choice between not having a paycheck and having a paycheck, I think we'd all do some pretty questionable things for cash.
So marriage equality, it was only passed 5 years ago in the Supreme Court. The case was Obergefell versus Hodges, I believe. What do you think? Let me rephrase this. So there's a lot of recent news with this, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. This is pretty recent news. It just came out today. But they're talking about completely, reversing that and taking that out and making it just not a thing anymore. So, Gaffney, for those of us who might not be as familiar with this topic, could you give us some details?
Obergefell was protected by the 14th Amendment rights of privacy.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's like a spitting image of the previous issue that we just talked about with, defunding Planned Parenthood. It's almost the exact same thing. So Harris, her time as a politician, she's always been super outspoken about QIA plus rights. Do you believe that this will gain the Biden-Harris campaign votes from the LGBTQIA plus community over the Trump-Pence campaign, or do you think we're still going to have, those outliers?
I think it depends on a lot of things. Like I said, Joe Biden has been one of the most outspoken advocates for LGBTIQA plus issues for the last couple of years. Kamala Harris has been, like you said, outspoken. She officiated weddings. She officiated weddings in California. And I mean, we can't also understate the fact that their campaign has been endorsed by Pete Buttigieg, and he's been acting as a surrogate. He is the first openly gay person to run for president, and that's a really big commanding title to have. So I think we should consider that, plus the fact that the Trump administration is openly hostile towards the LGBT community. So I don't think there's any I don't think there's any way for the Trump campaign to try to appeal to those voters. I think they're just ignoring them because they know they're not going to win them. And I think the Biden-Harris campaign is actually going to make a play for them.
What I appreciate about this particular issue is that the fact that Kamala officiated marriages is in fact direct action. You know, you can speak at Pride, you can perform all day, you can tweet, LGBT rights, yay, you can celebrate with the queers and you can appropriate queer culture forever. But direct action always is the difference.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick rundown of some of the things that she's done for the LGBTQI plus community. You know, she spoke at San Francisco Pride Parade in 2019. In 2004, she established a hate crimes unit to investigate and prosecute anti-LGBTQ violence, which is, you know, as we know, there are hate crimes that go on, and it's really, really scary, especially if you're in, you know, more red territories. And, you know, in 2006, Harris organized a conference in California that brought together over 100 officials from across the U.S. to discuss strategies to end the use of the so-called gay and transgender panic defense. 2014, California became the first state to ban the practice in law, which is another huge thing that she was part of. Harris and other senators introduced a bill to prohibit the practice nationally, and she took that head on, which is, I mean, all of that's just so huge because it's me growing up gay that's given me as an adult now the opportunity to go out and be myself and, you know, feel comfortable in my own skin in public. I live in the South, so sometimes it can be kind of difficult. And, you know, she was elected to Senate in 2016, and she continued to support, you know, LGBTQ rights frequently. And she co-sponsored many pro-equality legislation. And she spoke out against, you know, by transgender women a lot, and she still does. That's actually a huge part of her LGBTQI plus platform. And I really love that about her. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about her. She's so, I just love it. It makes, you know, with more and more children coming out at younger and younger age, just like we said, it's important to see representation and be able to, you know, see yourself on the screen. So, yeah, so now I kind of want to get into climate change. So, please take us on this one.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the climate crisis, I think a lot of people don't understand what is actually entailed when we talk about what's going on. Like right now, we're seeing 200 species die every single day to the climate crisis. And we're on track by 2050 to reach 3 degrees of warming. And by that time, a lot of us will be in our 30s and 40s. But what we'll see is an entirely different world. 98% of coral reefs will have gone extinct, which means that 50% of the world's food supply will be gone. A lot of those people in the global south won't have the food that they can sustain themselves. And really, when we talk about climate action, we're talking about America being a global leader, because a lot of countries have actually pegged their progress based on America's willingness to champion climate justice. And really, India has said that they won't take action until America does. Pakistan has said the same thing. And if America doesn't take action, a lot of other countries are saying, well, America had the opportunity to prosper from the Industrial Revolution and to build a lot of luxuries from that. But now they're saying that everyone else has to skip that option. But I think that when we talk about Biden and Harris, we're seeing people that are actually going to go out to communities and safeguard people's well-being and safety. And also, when we see Biden and when we see Pence and Trump, we're seeing the total opposite of that. We're seeing a neglect and actual advancement of the fossil fuel industry, allowing them to really just open up the Arctic for drilling, to continue to expose entire communities to continued deforestation and continued drought, because a lot of people would like to insulate themselves from climate change, but America is already being drastically impacted by it. California and the American West is going to look drastically different from the wildfires that are going to happen there and continued rise in temperatures. By that time, by 2050, we're going to see a lot of areas of California being uninhabitable because of the temperatures being too high. And that's already happened in parts of Guatemala and parts of El Salvador. And really what we have to see is that Trump, which is his base, Trump's base, which is based in rural America, is now experiencing a lot of droughts and experiencing a lot of floods. and they're waking up to the fact that this is climate change. This is impacting me right now, but they're seeing it and just seeing that, oh, they don't care about my livelihood. They don't care about my farm. They don't care about my family. They're just caring about how they can profit from the fossil fuel industry continuing to exploit communities. So Americans, I think, have to wake up to the fact that these natural disasters aren't due to forest management. They aren't due to just people continuing to litter in their communities. They aren't just one-off things. This is a continual pattern of our climate continues to destabilize. If we don't take action, we're going to see a vastly different planet, and geopolitics really change for the entire world. And every other country is taking action. The EU has dedicated 55 billion euros to eliminate 20% of their emissions capacity dependency on fossil fuels. And now we're seeing Russia is actually doubling down in America. So really, when we see these countries, we're like, oh, wait, Russia and America are now both working to advance fossil fuels. I thought we were supposed to be enemies and working to polar opposites. But now we're seeing China trying to champion climate, the largest solar farm. And we're seeing India now saying, well, we aren't going to take action until America takes leadership. We're seeing every country taking a stance but America. We're just sitting here not really acknowledging climate change, not acknowledging the science, and really disrespecting 98% of scientists who agree on climate change and the fact that we have 7 years before we start reaching irreversible feedback loops, which will really make a lot of the cities that we are in now completely uninhabitable for us to live in.
That's terrifying, first of all.
And I'll say it again. Yeah. The Biden-Harris campaign believe in science, and that's the bottom line. They believe in science, and they listen to scientists, and we can't have another 4 years of inaction. The United States is the outlier here. We are the ones not taking action to work to prevent climate change and stop all this chaos before it's too late. And the bottom line is the administration right now does not believe in science.
So, Jerome, what are or Santiago, did you have something to say?
Yes. Thank you. No, I just wanted to highlight Joe Biden's plans for climate change because while the Trump campaign continues to deny that it even exists, Joe Biden has a plan to completely reduce our carbon footprint by, Jerome can probably correct me on this, is it 2050 or 2030?
2050.
2050. Yeah, which I mean, it's not as expansive or as comprehensive as something I would like. I would like to see something way more aggressive, but at least we're recognizing there's a problem, and that's the starting step. Because one side of the political aisle is continuing to say that this isn't actually happening, that this is all in our heads, the science isn't there, there's nothing to back it up. Well, the other side of the aisle is actually looking at the science, and they're saying, holy shit, this is actually happening, and if we don't act, we're going to have an issue. So again, I would like to see something more comprehensive from Joe Biden's side. I think they will move on quicker once they're in office, because right now they're still trying to balance politics. But even the current plan is already way better than anything the current administration has done. So I think I again think Kamala's going to talk about that and go at Mike Pence's throat for it, because there is actually two entire generations who really care about this, who aren't being heard by the current administration.
So, Jerome, just to kind of just sum this up for me, what steps does Gen Z have to take, or what steps can we encourage our older counterparts to take to see progress now? Like, how can we start seeing progress, ASAP? Because this is going to be our world and we have to take care of it.
Yes, I think that really the biggest step that we can take and really when electing Joe Biden, what we can do is stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. We allocate $20 billion to subsidize the fossil fuel industry, and we continue to increase that every single year. And really, if we stop doing that right now, we'll see a shift in 20% immediately to clean energy dependency. And we're going to see a lot more people having clean jobs, being trained to install wind turbines in their communities. And also, we're going to see that a lot of people are going to understand that clean energy is actually a lot cheaper. Oil, I think, is around 20% per kilowatt hour of energy, while solar is now at 7 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's really it's about economics, but America's putting their foot on the wrong side of history. They're allowing people to continue to be not cared for. And I think that also a big step that we can take, which is outlined in the Green New Deal, is that we have a framework. We have to put people to work. We have to make sure that we're prioritizing communities that are being impacted right now. Like in Miami, they have sunny day flooding where it's just normal to see flooding happening in your community. And you just drive through 2-3 feet of flooding right in your neighborhood. And everyone's like, okay, this is normal. And I think that really the steps we have to take are that we desubsidize. We have automatic training for people to be trained in solar and wind installation. Also, we need to pass the Clean Energy DC Act, which will provide education for K through 12 young people to be taught climate science as a core subject, and also provide $10 billion for college students to really invest in study climate science and how they can protect their future. Also have the National Climate Bank Act, where companies can actually funnel in funds to be able to start having climate funds be able, freed up for us in case there's a natural disaster or in case there's a huge event that is climate-led and climate-informed. I think that those are 3 steps. It's not hard. It's just people aren't brave enough to really take the leadership. They don't have the moral clarity to stand up to the fossil fuel industry, because a lot of people don't know that Standard Oil was the first company to ever lobby the U.S. government. They were the first. They wrote the being Congress. So we're going up against the first and the worst. And we have to be the people that are going up and saying we're people powered. We're not powered by the fossil fuel money. We're not powered by fossil fuel money. And actually, Biden and Harris have actually taken the no fossil fuel money pledge, where they take no fossil fuel money from ExxonMobil or Shell or BP or all these bad actors that are in the fossil fuel industry that are trying to become solar barons. But like, no, we're not corporate led. We're powered by people. So
That's
those are like the 3
everything.
steps that we can take.
And if we can find a way to take those steps in a way that addresses environmental racism, boy, we'd really be on our way. If we could find a way to target those programs and that money into areas that are being more heavily affected by climate change, if we could target that money into areas that remain impoverished because they're constantly having to rebuild from hurricane season, and if we could focus that money into Tornado Alley, and if we could focus that money into areas of California and the Pacific Northwest that are burning down and you're having to pay for those repairs, you know, where I said this on the VOTcast a few weeks ago, you know, for the obscenely wealthy, for even just the moderately wealthy, we're still in the minor inconvenience phase of climate change where, you know, it'll put a dent in their pocket, but it's not hurting them yet. They're not going to do anything until it's hurting them. And even for the rest of us, our homes are burning down, our towns are washing away. This is major life now. But, you know I speak from a position of privilege. I'm not in an area that is so strongly affected by natural disasters. You know, we get the aftershock, we get the waves later, we get the clouds of smoke and the remnant storms. But I was down at the coast today to see my grandmother. She lives in Seadrift, which is just north of Corpus Christi, and she was terrifiedly checking her phone for updates on Hurricane Delta, because we're now in our 4th letter of the Greek alphabet, coming in up from Mexico, and it's coming up into the Gulf. And she sigh of relief that it's only going to be a Category 2 when it hits the Gulf, because our water is slightly cooler than the water in Mexico right now. Water that has already supported how many hurricanes this season, but we're going to cheer because our water is slightly cooler. This is where we are.
Also, just like to wrap up, like just how the scale of like the power that our generation has. Like if we unite and we organize, I had the honor to intern for Congressman John Lewis, and through that experience, I learned that like every time a young person walks into an elected official's office, their mind immediately lights up, because they see that once we're stepping on the political stage, they're going to have to be accountable to the issues that are most potent to us. And climate justice is the most important thing, because we're inheriting a future that. And so if you're watching this right now, you can call a member of Congress. You can call them for 5 minutes. If it's before 5:30, you can call them and just talk about how you want certain bills in your community to be passed, and how you want your clean air and clean water to be a priority. And like if you're living in Washington, D.C., you can actually walk into an elected official's office and pass them a mail or a letter to say this is what we want done, and they'll actually send it to the chief of staff. And most times the representative himself will actually see it and say, oh, if he's politically active enough to come here, politically active enough to call, politically active enough to actually turn up in my office, he's gonna vote. So I need to make sure that I'm paying attention to the issues that he cares about. So you have a lot of power as long as you're united with your classmates or your friends and family to go out and take action.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. So, before we wrap this all up, we just want to say thank you again for taking the time to listen in. Like you supporting us every single day, we would not be able to do what we're doing. We're here to make sure Gen Z knows what's going on and is educated on the, political world. Gen Z has the chance to change the political landscape forever, and it all starts with turning out to vote. So to learn more about how to register to vote, who the candidates are, or any other information you may need, please visit our website at votersoftomorrow.org. Also, if you're able, we would greatly appreciate any amount that you can donate. We rely on donations from people like each one of you who believe in what we're doing and, can allow us to hit our goals with all this. We have a lot we want to do here. So if you can, please consider, donating. It's right in the top right of our website. So do we have any closing thoughts, y'all? Closing opinions, closing thoughts,
Yeah.
comments?
So, I just think we need to really focus on what these people are offering for Generation C. This organization is called Voters of Tomorrow. We are the voices and the leaders of tomorrow. And the fact that we're not being listened to is just concerning in a lot of different ways. So having that opportunity to make our voices heard is really important. And I think that's the goal of these live streams and everything that both 1 million of us, From at the Polls, and Voters of Tomorrow is doing, just getting young people engaged and making our voices heard. So while watching the vice presidential debate tonight, try to focus on what they're offering to young people specifically, what part of their policy and proposals is targeted towards us, because we are the future and we're going to inherit whatever happens from the next administration.
Yeah, and to add on to that, the youth voting bloc has the power to determine the outcome of the election. And anyone listening who is part of that voter bloc, we have the power to determine the outcome of the vote matters. And by voting, you're using your voice and making your voice heard, because without voting you can't complain, and you can't complain that the elected officials aren't listening to you, because you're not holding them accountable, and your vote equals your voice. So make sure to use it.
All right, y'all. Well, I have been joined by Santiago Mayor, Sophia Shapiro, Justin Filbert, Virginia Gaffney, and Jerome Foster II. It's been a pleasure having you guys back. It was a really good conversation yet again, so I'm so excited about this, and I'm excited to see how the vice presidential debate goes. Thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ryan.
And to all of our viewers, we will see you in our next pre-show. So hopefully soon with everything going on.